Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Dolfini. You are in Strategic Boardroom, and welcome to Marketing Magic. It's so very good to see you. I want to invite you to let me know where you are coming from. I am broadcasting from the Midwest, where we know how to throw a winter. Man, it has been a chilly, chilly couple of days. And we just had like a whiteout blizzard here in Indiana, and we don't get those kind of whiteouts. We do up north, but I'm more in central Indiana. But I'd love to hear where you're from. Hopefully, you've got better weather than what we've got going on right now. But would love to hear about where you're from and what kind of business that you're in. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in the chat. Um, Tell me where you're from and what your business is. Okay, so go ahead and let me know that. And for those of you, we're gonna get right into this. Many of you, several of you, not all of you, right now, I have been messaging a little bit and just kind of getting a sense for what kind of things that you're struggling with in your marketing. And we're going to be covering a lot of ground here. So this is scheduled for 90 minutes. Probably not going to go that long unless you guys start asking a lot of questions, which is totally fine. I want you to ask any sort of questions that you have. Put them in the comment section, and I will get to them as soon as I get to a natural stopping point. And I have natural breaks built into this. So for those of you who have seen me before, you know I like to answer lots of questions. So let me know where you're from. Don't be shy. And just a couple of things before we get started, because we do have a lot to cover. I'm going to ask you just a couple of housekeeping things. First and foremost, do your very best try not to multitask. And the reason I say not to multitask is right now we're trying to train our brain, right? We're trying to not be so distracted and so distractible. And I know some of you are, let's see, we've got Alexander saying hello. You are from South Africa. Wow, excellent. And I'm a business efficiency specialist. Fantastic. Are you in business for yourself, Alexander? That sounds good. So, so let us know. And so Alexander's breaking the ice from South Africa. Welcome. So this is the thing is I know that some of you, right, like right now in South Africa, it is, it's probably near bedtime, right? 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And I know some of you may have kids you're trying to put to bed. You've got other things that you're trying to do. Maybe this is part of a side hustle. Maybe it's your main business and you're trying to learn marketing. So what I want you to do is train your brain for the next hour or so. Try not to multitask. Try to stay plugged in the best as you can. I don't want you to miss anything. Second thing is you are going to get a replay. So for those of you who are joining on YouTube, you get to watch the YouTube video as many times as you like. For those of you who are watching this here on StreamYard and you're watching me live, you are, well, I'm actually broadcasting live to YouTube as well. But for those of you who are watching through and signed up through Eventbrite, I will be sending you the link directly through your email. So whatever email you used, I will be sending the replay out to you on that. So let's see, we've got Alan from the Netherlands, self-employed project manager. I do a lot of workshops, change management, and team building. Interestingly enough, change management, Alan, is I am in a PhD program right now for organizational psychology, and that is all we seem to be talking about. You know, was it ADKAR and all these different theories in terms of change management. So that's interesting. And change management is so really critical. So for those of you who don't know what change management is, it's when an organization is going through a generally a more revolutionary type change as opposed to an evolutionary type change, that takes a change management person to be able to help navigate those potential pitfalls, right? And a change management expert, they're really, really worth their weight in gold. Let's see. We've got Lirak. You wrote a lot. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Lirak, co-founder of Co-Design. We are a Kosovo-based team focused on, man, Kosovo. That's awesome. Based on software development for small and mid-sized businesses and non-government governmental organizations, NGOs. Our core work is high-performance websites, e-commerce platforms, and custom web apps like booking systems, dashboards, portals, internet tools, or internal tools. We also provide ongoing maintenance and support so clients can stay secure, running smoothly. Okay, excellent. So you can connect with Lirak on LinkedIn. Very good. And that was a lot. That's totally fine. And Alexander is the co-founder of a company called Quorum. Very good. All right. Well, excellent. Well, for those of you, and by the way, I know I tend to attract people who are networkers and the networking types, especially in this one. I have one that is tomorrow around financial literacy, but I have another one called Is Your Networking Not Working? And man, I tend to attract all sorts of you extroverts out there that love to connect. So if you're ever interested in that one. But all right. So for those of you, again, if you have not put up what it is, what your name is, what you do, feel free to put that up there. So what I really admire about what Lyrac did here, though, is some marketing. Sorry for the long text. That's all. That's totally fine. But Lyrac, here's an interesting thing, though, that I'm going to be bringing this back up, and it's something around being specific in your core purpose, and we're going to be talking about that. So you're very, very specific in your core purpose. You know not only your core purpose, you also know your client avatar. And that's really, really, those are 2 of 3 main critical components of business vision that we're going to be talking about. So I promise we're going to get to that. And I just want to make sure that you, you have, yeah, it's totally fine that you have a long text. No, all good. All good. I totally get it. So here's what we're talking about when we're getting into marketing magic. Again, if you are joining me, please let me know where you are from and what line of work that you're in so I can make this webinar worth your while. All right, so the first job that is in order for you as a marketing person or a marketer of your organization is to create trust with your client avatar. It's not to entertain, it's not to make them laugh, it's none of that. It is to generate, it's not to generate views, all of that stuff. Your assignment, first and foremost, is to get them to trust you. And I know that sounds like, well, yeah, but if I get them to laugh, if I do, okay, fine. But why should they trust you? Why should they trust you? That is really, really critical, because if you're not able to get them to trust you quickly, they're going to move on. If they don't have a compelling reason to trust you quickly, and we're going to be talking about trust triggers here in a second, but the fastest way to create trust with anyone is to demonstrate competence. I don't care if you're a marketer. I don't care if you're a salesperson. I don't care if you're a manager or a leader. You need to be able to create trust and maintain trust. And the fastest way to create trust with someone is to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. Okay? So I want you to think about that. There are 7 elements of trust that we'll talk about here in a second. But the quickest way to create trust is by demonstrating you know what you're talking about. And the other thing, by the way, and just in case I don't say this, this is really critical, is that the fastest way to destroy trust is to demonstrate a lack of character. Demonstrate a lack of character. So if you're going to a networking function, right? And I know we're not really talking about that, networking specifically, but in terms of marketing, if you go to a networking function and you go there and get rip-roaring drunk, right? Like, how much are people supposed to trust you? Okay. Or if you're hitting on all the single women, or maybe the married women or married men or whatever, right? You're a little bit overly flirtatious. That's not going to fly, right? So that will demonstrate character, and you've got to be careful around that. So, Divya saying, oh my, I am Katamalayath. Divya Katamalayath. Oh my goodness. Now I'm vested, right? Now I got to get this right. Divya Katamalayath. Wow, that's a good one. All right. Waterloo, Canada. I am a business development manager at USOC, a managed IT and cybersecurity service for small and mid-sized businesses. Check us out. All right, excellent. Glad you could join us. So here's the thing, is you have to recognize that how can you demonstrate competence to your avatar? How are you going to get there quickly? Again, this is about marketing. And I know this might sound like, well, yeah, this kind of sounds basic. Here's the interesting thing, though. I end up having these conversations with a lot of people who are marketing professionals, and they still get this wrong. They still are not doing this. And I don't understand why. I don't understand it. Maybe they just don't get it. Maybe they just don't know any better. But I would like to think that they should. Okay? So I want you to think about this in terms of how you can demonstrate competence to your avatar, or at least create trust. Okay? So demonstrating competence, right? That is where you're basically showing them that you know what you're talking about. And that character component, the competence and the character, those are 2 root systems, or those are 2 trees that share the same root system, right? So the fastest way to build trust with your audience, with your marketing audience, is to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. It's something that I've heard referred to as infotainment. infotainment, right? Almost like creating that editorial about, hey, did you know X, Y, or Z, right? And that's where you're starting to, you're warming these people up from a frozen traffic. Like these are people who don't even, they're not even problem aware. They don't even know that they have a problem, right? And all of a sudden you say, hey, did you realize that, carrots are really good for you? And you're like, yeah, I kind of knew that, right? But did you know that it actually doesn't just help with your eyes? It also absolutely can help with your skin and your nails and your this and your that and your liver function. And you're like, whoa, I had no idea. Did you actually know that beet juice can help offset Alzheimer's disease? True fact, right? Because of the flavonoid content, right? Some of this I'm making up. But my point is, now you're educating people in terms of why they might want to start drinking beet juice, especially for someone who may be struggling with dementia in their family, right? This is how you start showing competence right out of the gate, which is now going, oh, wow, this person sounds like they know what they're talking about. Yeah, because flavonoids help with X, Y, and Z and helps break down amyloid proteins in their brain, yada, yada, yada. That is all true, by the way, because I have studied that. But my point is that you're demonstrating that competence that now gets them interested, and now they are warming up from frozen traffic to cold traffic. Now they are aware, they're problem aware. Now they are warm traffic, they're solution aware, they can buy beet juice, and now they are you aware that you sell beet juice, right? And that is where they're hot traffic, and they are you aware, they're problem aware, they're solution aware, they are all the awares. And now it's just for you to continue to build that trust to get them to actually the next step, which would be obviously in the sales process. Okay. So let's look at another component to trust. We talked about competence. We talked about character. People want to know how much you care. They don't care about how much you know until they know how much you care. We've all heard that phrase. And that's really important, is that they have to feel like you at least care about them as a human being to some extent. If they feel like it's a transaction, it's not going to work, right? They don't feel like that you don't care. Are you confident in what you're talking about? You're like, yeah, you know what? If you buy this, it might work. It's okay. Who's going to want to buy that product, right? If you're not confident, you've got to be fully committed. How committed are you to this? Well, we took this beet juice and we had it studied by several scientists. We're really committed to this avenue of healthy eating, of clean eating. We're very committed. How clear is the communication, and how often is the communication? That is another element of trust. And then how consistent are you, right? So all of these areas around competence and character and caring, like if you are lax in any one of these areas around trust, people are not going to trust you, and you may never know why. And that goes, again, for your marketing. It goes for your sales. Absolutely goes for you as a manager. It goes for you as a boss, and it absolutely goes for you as a leader. So I want you to think about this. Where might you be falling short in creating trust with your marketing? So we're taking a top-down approach to looking at this from your marketing perspective. Okay. This is, again, we're just trying to create some magic in your marketing. And if you're falling short in any one of these areas, you might just need to tweak it a little bit and get people to trust you. And now all of a sudden they're going to want to listen to you. And it's like, oh, this person gets me. Robin is coming in and introducing. Okay. Hello. Hi everyone. I'm Robin, Alexander's partner. Oh, very good. Very well. Oh, Alexander's partner. Gotcha. Robin, Alexander's partner. That makes more sense. My question is, if gaining trust differs digitally, it does not. But so trust is is still important, right? I would say all 7 of these factors are still very, very relevant. They're still incredibly relevant. Because let me, if you were to break this down from a digital marketing perspective, and I am seeing this quite often, I'll see someone start out an ad with some information. And it's like, hey, did you know that 50% of businesses fail within the first 5 years? You're like, oh, right? Now, many people have heard that fact, but there's a lot of people who haven't. So if you're starting out with this, I'm like, yeah, that's true. Based on census data, based on data from the United States Small Business Association, based on other organizations that are outside the United States, this is a very real thing, right? So now you're leading and you're demonstrating with competence. And that is where, again, this is where you're showing and starting to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. Remember, the market judges you by your samples. Okay, so Robin, the market judges you by what you give away for free. It judges you by your samples. So if you're allowing them to sample and what it is that you do and how you know what you know, you're now positioning yourself as the expert, as the authority. And that is absolutely critical. So from a digital perspective, I think the faster you can demonstrate competence and show that you know what you're talking about is even more important because you have the barrier of a screen in front of you, right? So for you to get someone to trust you through a screen, I think it's more difficult rather than meeting someone face to face where you can see inflection, where you can watch them make eye contact. Does that make sense? So I absolutely think I think it absolutely matters, but it matters in slightly different ways. But trust and know, all 7 of these are absolutely still true. So hope that answers your question. Really good question, by the way. So let's talk about this. I want you to think about this and many marketing, and I'm trying to front load this a little bit because I'm going to get a little bit more granular, but because I know a lot of people, they come on and they're like, yeah, I want to watch this, but I can't. I'm trying to put kids to bed or I'm trying to finish up my work or whatever. So I'm going to front load this a little bit. Like I said, you will be getting the replay at the end or, we'll be sending that to you. But many marketers will start and they'll focus on the features and the benefits. And they're like, so let me give you some examples here. When you're doing your marketing, okay, and you're trying to demonstrate competence and you're trying to show them what it is, that it is that you do, and you're thinking about your features and your benefits and your meaning. Most marketing does not go beyond benefit, right? Hey, my car has 500 horsepower. Okay, that is a feature. That is a feature. The benefit is that it goes from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour or 0 to 60 miles per hour in like 3 seconds. Excellent. And that's where they stop. You have to connect the meaning. You have to connect and create the fantasy. What's the meaning for them? What's the fantasy? And that's an important word. What's the fantasy that you're trying to create for them? Because most people are trying to buy a fantasy. If you can sell them the fantasy that you're going to be the coolest guy on the block with the fastest car, or the coolest gal with the fastest car, or the prettiest dress, or whatever, or the best hair, whatever it is, that's the meaning. That's the fantasy. That's what you need your marketing to do. Do not just stop at the benefit. The features and the benefit give context to the fantasy. So if you just were saying, hey, how would you like to feel like the coolest dude ever? You're like, yeah? Like, what do you mean? Like, there's no context. But hey, would you like to buy a car that's got a really big engine and goes really fast and you'll be like the coolest guy on your block? You're like, that's not really my thing, right? Cool, right? So now, and that's not to say that you can't warm that market up, but you have to make sure that you're giving them the context. That's why the features and the benefits are important, but you can't stop there. Does that make sense? So you can give them features and benefits, but you also have to give them the meaning. It's like, so that you'll feel like the coolest dude, so that you'll feel like the prettiest belle at the ball, right? You will go to the store to buy a drill to put a hole in the wall so that when you hang up the picture, the meaning, when you hang up the picture, you're going to see your loved ones looking back at you and it's going to remind you of one of the best days of your life, your wedding, right? Or whatever, right? So, or your graduation, whatever happens to be. So I'm just saying the feature, the benefit, and the meaning, you have to go all the way to the meaning. You have to go all the way to painting the fantasy. Does that make sense? Please let me know that makes sense, because I want to make sure that you guys are understanding what this is, because your marketing absolutely needs to deliver all the way through the meaning, right? So how do you do that? I'm just going to give you something very granular. You'd say, hey, here's the feature, right? I've got this 500-page book. Great. That sounds terrible, right? That sounds like a lot of reading. But you don't have, the cool thing is you don't have to read all 500 pages. You can flip to any of the individual things that you want. It's like a cookbook. Oh, that's a benefit, right? Wherever you need help, you go right to that section. Cool. Which means ... Which means you have basically your own private little chef, right in a cookbook. right? Or hey, you've got this 500 page, cookbook. You can flip to any section that you want so that if you ever get lost or hung up, you know how you got someone right at your fingertips that can help you out, right? That's the meaning. That's the so that. All right. So what I want you to do, I know I kind of front loaded this a little bit, but here's the thing. We're going to get into the agenda here, but we are talking about seeking knowledge to understand versus seeking knowledge to take action. And here's the thing. I want to know by the end of this what you're actually going to be taking action on. So this is going to be important. Alexander saying, yes, it does make sense. All right. So the reality is this. Divya, I'm going to come back to your question in just a second. Because your question is very relevant. So seeking to understand, so I want to know specifically what you're going to be taking action on at the end of this. Not like, wow, that was great. I took a bunch of notes. Great. That's fine. I am not at the point now where I need the applause. Although we all need to have our egos fed, I guess, at different times. But that's not about this. Okay. Because I'm just letting you know, I want to know what you're going to be taking action on. So don't just be here to audit the class. Be here because I want to know what at the end are you going to implement. Because the truth is this, you can have the best, most efficient business. You can be an absolute paragon of virtue and your sales technique so dialed in that you could sell ice to Eskimos and voting booths to Castro and you can still starve. That's the truth. So I don't want you to just say like, well, I learned a bunch of stuff. And no, this is where you actually have to implement some of these things and actually take some meaningful action. All right. So let me get to Divya's question here. Does this flow change when moving from B to C to B to B? So it doesn't. Because let me ask you, Divya, do businesses buy things or do people buy things? People buy things. Even if it's B2B, it is still a human on the other side that's making the decision, unless you're truly selling a commodity, which I will tell you, I don't want to be in any sort of commodity business. I just don't, right? I'm not in the manufacturing business. I am in more of a niche business. I would rather charge much higher, significantly higher amounts for what it is that I do than charging lower amounts and trying to make it up on volume, right? That just sounds like a lot more work to me. So for me, I want to be in a niche. I don't want my stuff being compared apples to apples. I want them trying to compare, apples to gold bricks, and I'm the gold bricks, right? I don't even want to, it's something known as differentiation. And in your marketing, it's really, really important that you're differentiated in your marketing. The minute people can start to compare, oh, you do this thing and I do this thing too. Well, now I can compare these two. That's when you're in danger. Okay. So I would say it absolutely does flow the same way because you're still trying to sell to human beings, not to a business, right? There's someone on the other end that still has to trust you. Really good question. So let's talk about this. So this book that I've got up on the screen here, I'll take a quick sip. This book up here is my first book. And this is the book called The Time Wealthy Investor. And it's actually not in print anymore. But this book was written for specifically mom and pop landlords and property managers, people who are managing rental properties. And it's a good book. Like it's about 280 pages and it's some of my very, very best stuff and things that I would teach, things that I was utilizing every single day and all of these different things. And my book sales, again, I put this book together. It took me like 18 months to write and rewrite, and I had to scrap it all and start all over again and rewrite it again, and finally got it all the way through, got the book cover designed, and I put the whole thing up on Amazon, and I was like, wow, that's great. And I was kind of like, you're welcome, world, because this is the book that you need if you're managing properties. And I was really dialed into a very distinct niche, right? And my book sales after 3 weeks of having that book out there were $0. Ugh. Wow. I was so frustrated. I was like, what is going on? Like, man, this is gonna be a lot harder than I thought. I built this really good business. I built this really good book, which took me a lot of time to put together, but I was getting nowhere with it pretty fast. And then I realized, well, I did no promotion of this whatsoever. Okay. So I started to learn the marketing side of things. And I never sold a book before. I created a brand called Landlord Coach. And I started creating funnels. And let me know in the comments if this sounds anything familiar to your journey. I created this brand and I started, connecting the brand more to the book. And I've got all these funnels that I'm out there and I'm posting, right? And I'm marketing and I'm emailing and I'm cajoling, right? I started to put a lot more effort into selling the book. I paid for Amazon ads, I paid for Google ads, I paid for Facebook ads, and my volume increased tremendously. And after 3 months of doing nothing but try to sell these darn books, all that effort, I went from $0 in sales to $95.64. Yeah, that is not a misplaced decimal point. I was so discouraged. And to be honest, how many of you would have felt the same way? I took 2 years basically to write and publish this book. I basically had no sales. I had another 90 funnels, buying other people's courses and creating a brand and spending money and more money. I felt like the only people who were actually making money were the people who were, basically selling the marketing, right? The people who are, the Facebooks and the Googles of the world. And by the way, this wasn't even profit. These were just gross sales. I was selling the book at break even just to try to get some traction, right? Does anybody remember those free plus shipping offers? Oh, hey, here, buy my book. Just pay, $8.99 or $7.99 or whatever it was. And, free, you get the book for free, just pay for shipping. But everybody knew a book doesn't cost, shipping doesn't cost $7.97. What you were doing, you were paying for the book, the cost of the book, right? So there was really no profit, but you were paying for that and the shipping, right? So really it was not technically free, but that's what they were calling it, right? How many of you would have felt really discouraged at this point and ready to throw in the towel? So later on, we're going to talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect and why the psychological effect that happens when many business owners give up at this point. This is how I felt. You just see it in my face. Okay. Why didn't they buy the books? Why do you think that they didn't buy the books? I had done very little to demonstrate trust with my avatar. That's why. I was selling them homework. I was trying to sell them the trip and not the vacation. I was saying, hey, go to the airport and drag all your luggage with your 3 kids through the airport and get to a destination, and then try to drag all your stuff back through another airport and through the hotel lobby and to another place and with your 3 children, and try not to, get into a battle with each other the entire way. But, no. Well, that's what I was selling them. I was selling them this 300-page book, not the day at the beach. That's what I was selling. Remember, I talked about feature, benefit, and meaning. I wasn't selling them the meaning. I wasn't selling them the better life at the other side of this. So this is why I had done very, very little to demonstrate trust with my avatar. And my sales, when I did start eventually making some money, but it wasn't from book sales, right? You'll see is this little tiny sliver at the bottom. I don't know if you can even see it on the page, but a little sliver from from 2017 into 2018. I started making a little bit of money. I was making about $1,000 a month. And then I started, I was making about just shy of $10,000 a month as I was heading into 2020. And then I went to about $17,000 a month. But the interesting thing is this wasn't from book sales. The book sales became the lead generation piece. That's what I started giving away more for free. And I wasn't really able to sell the books at a profit, but I was using that as a lead magnet because people were interested in the book, but they were more interested in what I had to bring to the table. They wanted to work directly with me, right? And that's how I was able to get that kind of revenue. Now, I did pull Landlord Coach into neutral, and I still have that brand. If you want to go to landlordcoach.com, you'll see it out there. That's a brand that I created. But Strategic Boardroom is what I decided to go to because I wanted to distance myself more from the real estate realm. I didn't really want to stay in the real estate coaching space anymore, right? So in terms of an agenda, I just want to hit some of this. I know we're 30 minutes in, but I'm just going to hit some of the things that I'm going to hit at a high level and from a top-down perspective. We're going to be talking about systems, and then we're going to be talking about psychology. That is the S&P approach that I take to business. Systems, psychology, and both of them are incredibly relevant. Then we're going to be talking about the 4 core functions of business, then some marketing magic. Let's see what that looks like, and then I'm going to give you some resources at the end. The Time Wealthy Advantage is my last book. If you look over my shoulder here, you'll see this is the book that I wrote. For those of you, I know there's quite a few people of you who are outside the United States. If you're interested in buying it outside the United States, your best bet is to go to Amazon and buy it there. I'm not here to promote the book, but if, again, I get a lot of people say, well, where can I get it? If you're inside the United States and you'd like me to sign a copy, you can go to strategicboardroom.com and you can buy it directly from there. So that is all the promotion. I'm just letting you know that this is where the next piece of this, when I start talking about the Viper framework, the Viper methodology, that's where this gets very granular in that book, The Time Wealthy Advantage. All right, so let's talk about the Viper method. This is a top-down approach to your business. So let's look at that. The first and most important thing is vision. This is where, again, we're going to come back to vision, but there's vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. The vision component in your business is really critical because it defines where it is that you're going to go. I'm not going to get super granular on the rest of the Viper framework today because it's just not relevant to marketing as much. It's really more relevant in the business vision. So I'm not going to get super deep on that. If you do, my recommendation is to look for, so I just recently had done another one around the business growth multiplier. I really get into the weeds on the Viper framework. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go to YouTube and look those videos up, or you can always sign up for a live webinar when I'm hosting those again. So let's talk about vision. Vision has two components. It has personal vision and it has business vision. The personal vision component is, where is it do you want to go? Alexander, where do you want to go? Robin, where do you want to go? Divya, where do you want to go? And I'm saying, like, what do you mean where I want to go in your life? Like, what do you want your life to look like if it wasn't defined by income generation? Like, I'm sorry, is this a marketing webinar? What the heck are we talking about this for? The reason we're talking about this is because all of your decisions in your business, and especially in your marketing, and especially if it's you marketing your business, need to be filtered through this personal vision lens, because you might be heading in a completely different direction of what you actually want in your life. So I'm going to spend 30 more seconds on this, but I just want you to understand, like, when you create a personal vision, and I want that business vision to exist to deliver that personal vision for you. And the danger in creating a business vision without ever thinking of a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm just letting you know that just sucks. It's just terrible. So I want you to be really honest with yourself about what you want in your life and think about what that could look like. And that you could say, well, what are just some things that you look forward to? What do you want your relationship with your spouse to look like, your kids, your friends, and your faith, and so forth, right? So I want you to think about that. Let's talk about the 3 C's of business vision. So this is really around the meat and potatoes around what it is that, and it's going to make your marketing significantly more effective. And that's what we're looking for, is really creating that magic in your marketing and making it much more effective. And understanding these next 3 elements is going to make your marketing stand out and make it massively more effective. I'm just going to tell you this. Anytime that I have been hired in as a strategist and I've been invited into people's businesses, whether physically or just, metaphorically, or virtually, one of these 3 areas are almost always lacking. And it shows up in bad marketing. It shows up in ineffective sales. It shows up in unfulfilled and unhappy customers and unfulfilled and unhappy employees. So I'm just telling you, these 3 C's are very foundational for the rest of your business. So let's unpack those. The 3 C's of business vision are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Core purpose, core values, client avatar. Your core purpose is pretty straightforward. What business are you in? And what problems do you solve? And it's really important that you be really specific about what these things are. So when you say, like, let me go back up here just a second. So Lirac, okay, if you read this, and you heard me read it earlier, I'm not going to read it again, but Lirac here was very specific in his core purpose and his client avatar. Probably not really specific in core values, but what I'm saying, like, what business are you specifically in? He kind of labeled it. Okay. What problems do you specifically solve? He labeled it. And this is really important. The more dialed in that you get on this, the more effective you're going to be in your marketing. Don't just say, well, I'm in real estate. That tells me nothing. If you say you're in the residential real estate space on the south side of Miami in this specific district, okay, that tells me a lot more. Okay, that's going to be really, really important, because if you're not clear in your core purpose, it doesn't magically get more clear as it leaves your lips to their ears. So you really want to be clear in your core purpose. Let's look at core values. Core values is what matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you were no longer in business. Now, I know this sounds super squishy. I know you're like, oh, geez, here we talking about this core value stuff. Okay. I'm telling you, it absolutely makes a huge difference. And the reason why is because your business is just an extension of you. Your core values are going to extend into your business. So how you do business is just a reflection and an extension of you, right? So if you don't have these things defined, they will be defined by the strongest personality that's in the room. And if that's not always you, that can be a problem. So I'm just saying, like, especially if you're trying to grow and you're trying to scale, you need to have your core values well defined, because core values is what defines company culture. And company culture and company brand are inextricably linked. Think of companies that have a very strong brand. There's very strong brand presence. Chances are they also have a very strong and well-defined company culture, because they have a very, very defined set, well-defined set of core values. So I want you to take that time to determine what those core values are. And you might be thinking, well, what are my core values? Your core values, you may value a lot of things. Yeah, I value peanut M&Ms, but I'm not going to go to war over them, right? But someone breaks into my house and threatens my family. Yeah, they're going to be met with a lot of resistance, right? Because that's a violation of a core value of mine. So I'm just saying, like, for you, you may have a lot of things that you value, but if something shows up that is so important that you're willing to get up off the couch and take action on, that's how you know it's a core value. And those are the things that you want to define in your business through the lens when you're thinking about what matters to you about this business and how would the world be worse off if you went out of business. Next is, so we talked about core purpose, core values. Let's talk about client avatar. Your client avatar is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? Who do you want to serve? And be really specific in terms of their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. Like, I want to know, like, what area geographically are they, right? Think of their geographics was, where they are. Their demographics is who they are. Like, are they married? Are they single? Are they old? Are they young? Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they educated? Are they not educated? Like, those are the things that you want to know in the demographics. And from the psychographics perspective is, how do they think? How do they think? And how do they buy? And psychographics, I want you to think of ALIA, A-L-I-A. I want you to think of their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, their aspirations, their goals. Think about things like, what TV shows do they watch? What magazines do they read? Do they read books? Do they drive? Do they drive a lot? Do they commute? Whatever they're doing. What do they watch? Do they watch American football, or are they watching World Cup? Are they watching NASCAR? Are they watching Formula One? Whatever it is, whatever they're fans of, this is really important for you to know so you can market to them in a way that's going to reach them. Then, because the best avenue is like, oh my gosh, that person gets me. We're going to come back to that in just a hot second. So again, these are the 3 C's of business vision: core purpose, core values, and client avatar. What I want you to do is I want you to think about this and think, what one of these areas are you really solid in, and which one of these areas do you feel like you've got a little bit of work to do? Okay, go ahead and post that up on the screen. Okay, so hang on one second here. Alexander's got a question. If my current lead generation feels fragmented or is underperforming, what is the first symptom that usually points back to a lack of clarity in my business vision versus just a technical error in my funnel? Let me make sure I get this. So it feels fragmented or underperforming. So it's going to depend, right? And this question is a little tricky to answer, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's going to depend on the type of marketing. So if I'm looking and I'm seeing, like, for example, if I feel like my the people that are coming to me are not the people that I want to work with, that's an avatar problem, right? So if that would be a first symptom, that's going to point to a lack of clarity in my client avatar. Okay. And that's probably the best way that I can say this, but it is a little different if you're feeling fragmented, and I was thinking about going in a different direction with this, but I'm actually going to stay on this thread, because if you're attracting the wrong avatar, and what do I mean by that? Like, let's say that you're attracting people who are broke. Let's say you're attracting people who are just tire kickers. Let's say that you're attracting people who are just clogging up your funnel and they're really not serious buyers. That to me sounds like an avatar problem. And if it is, now, or it could be marketing problem, right? Because and originally when I was working with the people under Landlord Coach, I was working with some pretty amazing people. The problem was I had a lead generation problem because I wasn't attracting enough of the people in a very, very niche down segmented market. So that would be one of the first things that I would see if I'm fragmented, is if I'm attracting people who really don't fit my avatar, or maybe they do fit my avatar, but you're like, oh my gosh, these people are a nightmare. I don't know that I want to deal with these folks. So that to me would be one of the first things that would tell me that something's wrong in my business vision. I hope that answers your question. So Robin's asking questions. So we have to create a persona that suits the ideal. Hold on a second. So we have to create a persona that suits the ideal client to market well. Create a persona. Okay. No, well, it depends if you have a personal brand or if you're working through your company. I wouldn't want to change my persona because I'm trying to attract a certain avatar. I personally would say, well, if this is who I am as Mark Dolfini is the same as I am as a dad, is the same as I am as a strategist, is the same as I am as a webinar host, right? Like, I'm not creating a different persona. That's why when I mention your core values of your business have to be in alignment with your core values. Because if you create core values that are not in alignment with you, you're going to create a business that you hate. So you use the words very specifically, creating a persona. I wouldn't want you to be inauthentic. And I will tell you another reason why. Because the market will smell that. There's a person, and it does not matter who it is, but I have been watching this person for quite some time. And I've been following this person for quite some time. And this person, I'm actually looking for some authenticity. And I would not buy from this person because it just comes across as so inauthentic. And I was like, wow, like I just don't know that I trust this person. And I'm just telling you that person, and I happen to know some people who work around this person, they are struggling. And the reason they're struggling, like, they think it's marketing problems. They think it's all this, but they're trying to put this persona out there that's not in alignment with who they really are. And I think that's why they're struggling. I really do. So I don't want you creating a synthetic persona that's not authentically you, because your authentic self will attract the avatar that you're most looking for. So again, that's my opinion on that. So what I want you to do, I want you to think about this. Where did my mouse go? Here we go. So what I want you to do is I want you to think about this one thing. The 3 C's of business vision. You got the core purpose, core values, and client avatar. I want you to remember this. Your job is not to provide good service. Your job is not to have a satisfied customer. These are the base standards. This is the default setting for providing a good product or service, or for having a satisfied customer. I want you to think of the last time you went to a restaurant and you sat down and you ordered food and it came and it was satisfying. The waitress checked in on you once or twice, and the bill came and it was reasonably priced, and you paid the bill and you left and you were satisfied. How many people are you going to tell? How many people you're going to be like, oh, wow, I left and I was so satisfied? No one. You're going to tell no one. And that is the problem, is because you're providing the base standard. Your job is to create raving fanatics around your business, around your product or service. I want them to be like, oh my gosh, they went so far and above and beyond. And yeah, it was a little more expensive, but holy crap, if you're going for a really good experience, that's the thing I want you to think about. Is I want you to think about the client's experience from beginning to end, and that starts in your marketing. It starts well before they ever set foot in your establishment. It starts long before they ever click on a link or log into your website or do any other sort of thing. So your job in your marketing is to start them down the path of creating raving fanatics. So that is all around your vision, right? Sorry, your personal vision and your business vision. When you're looking at infrastructure, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the rest of this. I'm just going to kind of go through this rather quickly because it's not as relevant. But when you're looking at infrastructure, these are the bones of the business, right? The desks, the chairs, the software, the computer systems, and things like that. I want you to think about your infrastructure, though, in the context of lead generation, right? Your marketing, when it comes to marketing, and I want you to start thinking about your marketing software and structure and infrastructure, it's going to take things like your CRM, your customer resource management tools. Which ones do you have? I mean, many of you are operating just by memory, and your memory is going to fail you. You need to have CRM software packages which are ungodly inexpensive right now. There's Pipedrive, Go High Level. I'm not a big fan of Go High Level, but it's okay. HubSpot's good. Pipedrive's good. Salesforce is kind of like the 900-pound gorilla. Is an option, but it's so expensive for most small businesses. It's just not, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But think of other types of infrastructure, like Monday's another one. But I want you to think about the infrastructure that you're going to put in place that's going to align with that vision that you've created. I want you to think about sourcing software, right? Like just different things like LinkedIn Navigator. This is where you're sourcing leads. Where are you getting leads from? You've got Apollo.io. You've got Lead IQ. These are ways that you can find people so you can market to them and reach them in the ways that are most important to them. Okay, so think about that. You've got automations and integration software. There's things like MailChimp, Constant Contact, Zapier, Odo. These are all automations and integration type software. I'm not going to get into the weeds on each one of these, but here's the thing. I want you to start thinking about your infrastructure that you need to have, because the reality is this. Why does vision come first? Vision comes before infrastructure because let's say Robin, for example, wants to lay on the beach in Spain for 2 months out of the year rubbing cocoa butter on her belly, right? That's a fine vision, okay? But at the end of the day, if Robin created this infrastructure where she has to return emails and phone calls in a timely manner, that's going to be a horrible experience when she's trying to lay on the beach rubbing cocoa butter on her belly, right? So I'm just saying, like, I want you to think of why vision has to come first and why that needs to be very, very clear, okay? So the Viper methodology, again, we talked vision, we talked infrastructure. Now let's talk about process. Process is simply how you do stuff, okay? And there's a tactical component and there's a strategic component. Sorry, I thought someone was messaging me. So there's tactical and strategic. Tactical process is basically how you're going to do things from a day-to-day perspective, your standard operating procedures, your checklist items, your day-to-day boring activities, how you answer the phone, your opening procedures, your closing procedures, right? These are the sorts of things that you have to think about in your marketing from day to day. Who are you going to follow up with first, and where are you going to initiate your marketing that particular day, right? That's all stuff that needs to be defined. When you're looking at, if I'm drawing a box around infrastructure and tactical process, keep in mind that's your battleship. That's your system, right? That's the battleship that you created, your warship. And when you create a strategic plan, that's when you take that battleship out of the harbor, right? You're not just going to let it stay moored there and be battered around by the economic winds of whatever blows through. No, you want to take it out and go make some trouble, right? That's why I'm saying that's what you're saying. So keep doing. Oh, okay. Thank you. I will keep doing. Thank you. Joining us from YouTube. So when you're thinking about strategic planning, this is when you're thinking about strategic planning from the perspective of taking that system and going and doing something with it. And this is where marketing comes into this is where marketing comes front and center. Is you start thinking about the people, the purpose, and the promotion. The people are who are you promoting to and who else are you going to need in your organization and outside of your organization to affect this strategic plan. Okay? Think about that. Think about who they are. Again, what does that sound like? That sounds like client avatar. So what other people are you going to need? Are you going to need people to help affect this strategic plan that maybe part of the strategic plan is to get into a new market, is to increase market share. Maybe it's to vertically integrate into a market. Maybe it's actually to launch a new product or service. That comes and speaks directly to core purpose, right? The purpose and the purpose, the strategic purpose needs to align with the core purpose. And the reason for that is because if the strategic purpose does not align with the core purpose, it's going to be very fragmented and very confusing. It would be if Starbucks started selling chainsaws. It would be very weird. They're like, why are we selling chainsaws? Right? Like, what are we doing this for? Like, that's what I want you to think about in terms of strategic purpose. Okay. Last is promotion. Promotion is just blabbing to the world. It's repeating yourself and repeating yourself often. It's communicating outwardly in your marketing and your advertising and your networking and your promotion, right? And it's also promoting internally and letting your employees know, letting your vendors know, letting your suppliers know, and you're repeating yourself a lot. So that's why I call it promotion and not necessarily communication, because promotion is by inference doing it often. So that is the process component, and it comes down to tactical and strategic. So the next piece is execution in the Viper framework. Execution, a good plan violently executed now is much better than the perfect plan executed next week. A quote by General George S. Patton. And the reason I bring up execution is because most plans fall apart in their execution. You can have the most amazing plan, but the reality is, if you don't execute well, it's not going to matter. So this is where, and I say this with love in my heart for all of you people who are on the call that are maybe the entrepreneurs that have like 37 things on their to-do list, right? Like, how many people have that 37 item to-do list that they're going to do today, right? Well, the reality is that having too many priorities has the same impact as having none. And that makes people really, really ineffective. And it also lowers job satisfaction. That's why I suggest coming up with a daily 5. The daily 5 are up to 5 highly specific actions that you can take that are going to move the needle towards your vision or your strategic plan. One of the two. And for those of you who are here and learning marketing, most of your actions and activities need to be around your daily 5. This for me right now is part of my daily 5. Now for me, I like a daily 3 because 5, if I'm doing 5 every single day, I can't keep up with that pace. But for me, a daily 3 works really, really well. That's why I said up to 5 highly specific needle moving activities that you're going to take that are going to drive you towards your vision or your strategic plan. The last component of this is reporting. Reporting is just measuring your actions in your activities. And you do that by monitoring your lead metrics and your lag metrics. When I'm talking about lead metrics, I'm not talking about leads like marketing leads. I'm talking about they are preceding your results, right? So the lead metrics are just tracking your actions and activities. Your lag metrics are the results of those actions and activities. So again, did I have any control whatsoever in terms of how many people log on to this call? No, I have zero control over that. Do I have any actions or activities that I do? Do I have any control over how much I marketed this? Yeah, I have direct control over that. But I don't have any direct control in terms of who actually shows up or who actually stays. So that's a lag metric. So I can say, well, yeah, I'm going to do a webinar and I'm going to get 300 people to show up. Okay. As long as you know your numbers, that might mean you have to get 3,000 people to sign up to get 300 people to show up. So you don't have a real direct control over your lead metrics or lag metrics. I want you to understand that. That's important for you to know. You do have direct control. Sorry, I said that wrong. You do have direct control over your lead metrics. You don't have direct control over your lag metrics. So those are all things around the Viper framework. We talk systems, let's talk psychology. Now, the psychology component, there we go. Systems are important, but systems are only going to get you so far. And when you're looking at your psychology, you're looking at both personal psychology and you're looking at business and organizational psychology. Personal psychology is things around self-worth, self-management, your own personal limiting beliefs, right? It's our own brands of individual crazy, right? Alan, I understand. That's okay, Alan. So you will be getting the replay. But thank you for letting me know. So I promise we won't talk much about you. Okay. But thanks for stopping by. So the limiting beliefs, all of these things around individual psychology. The business psychology is business and organizational psychology, which is around external and internal psychology. So that's also important. Let's unpack the business psychology for just a second. When you're looking at external and internal, internal and external, you're looking at internal things like management and leadership. Those are important, but we're not talking about those today. That's in a different webinar. External are things like vendor psychology and negotiations, even things like politics and managing those sorts of things. But realistically, you also have to understand the buying psychology that exists in the mind of the buyer. Okay. And the way that I do that is when I'm looking at the 15 reasons why people buy. I'm going to go ahead and take myself down so you guys can see this. But the 15 reasons why people buy, this comes from the 4 core functions of business, specifically around lead generation. But what I want you to do is take a screenshot of this page here, and I want you to do a little bit of homework. I want you to think of all these different reasons why, people buy to make money. They buy to save money. They buy to save time, avoid effort, escape pain, whether physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain. They buy for more comfort. They buy for better health. They sometimes in the form of less stress. They buy to feel more love, to gain praise, increase their status with their tribe. They buy for truth, especially if they have felt lied to in the past. That is very, very true. Politicians use that one a lot. They buy for growth, and that can be growth in their knowledge, growth in their faith, growth in their wellness, growth in their muscles. They buy for, just because something is new, they'll buy for more perceived control, and they will also buy to be in contribution to others. So this is really, really critical in terms of why they buy. Now, how does this have to do with you? Or what does this have to do with you? What you're going to do is I want you to take that list and I want you to think of all the ways, directly and indirectly, that you help people make money with your product or service. How do you directly or indirectly help people make money? Come up with as many reasons as you possibly can. Come up with 10 different reasons of how you help people make money. If you're a financial planner, that might be easy. If you're a painter, that might be a little bit more trickier. But take some creative license in terms of how you help people directly or indirectly make money, right? And you might be thinking, well, if I'm a painter, my billing rate is $50 an hour, but I really like working with a high-end avatar who make $500 an hour. Okay, well, if you charge $50 an hour, you help them make $500 an hour when you're painting a room that they don't have to do themselves. Make sense? So get a little creative with your answers. How do you help them save money? How do you help them save time? I help business owners save a lot of time because I spend a lot of time in reading and research, and I distill those pieces down, and I give that back to them based on whatever particular problems they have and what strategy problems that they have. As a strategist, that's what I do. So I want you to think about this directly or indirectly. How do you help people do all these things? And all of a sudden, if you've got 10 under each of these categories, now you literally have 150 different ways that you can market to them. Again, some of the answers might be a little bit goofy, right? They might take a little creative license, but I want you to think about that in terms of how you can help people in all these different ways with your product or service. So that is the 15 reasons why people buy. Remember, your job is to create trust with your client avatar. Don't forget that. And you can use each one of those different reasons to create and generate trust. So we talked about systems. We talked about psychology. Now let's talk about the 4 core functions of business. And these have to be true in every single business. And those 4 core functions are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your customer's journey happens through your company in that order. Don't forget that. They show up because of your lead generation. They get converted through the sales process. And during all that time, because one flows naturally into the other, and each function has a symbiotic relationship with the other, this is how they're starting to create, this is how you're starting to create a real experience for them that's going to create them into a raving fanatic about your business. so that by the time they get to the fulfillment function, they've already really experienced something really cool with your organization. So don't think that these are hard functions with hard stops. No, they're not. They have to be, they flow one into the other, and some of them have a very symbiotic relationship, meaning that they feed off of one another, and they're very important that it does that. So imagine you spend all this time having a great lead generation function and really good sales function, really friendly sales staff, and really good knock the cover off the ball service. And then when it comes to the accounting function, you get throw mama from the train, getting them on the phone, demanding payment. What? That would be a huge disconnect and a huge violation of trust. So I want you to think about that, how all four of those functions need to run together. Next, let's look at marketing and creating some magic. So your job, again, is to create trust with your client avatar. And the way to do that is I want you to start thinking about a product or service for your client avatar who aligns with your core values. If they don't align with your core values, man, these are going to be the type of people you're like, oh my gosh, how in the world do we wind up with these people? Have you ever had that conversation with yourself? I have. And I've had to fire clients because they were not in alignment with my core values, especially in my property management business. There was people who were coming to me as a property manager that wanted me to do substandard work and not allow people to have basic heat, hot water, things like that, and hide behind me as the property manager. No, I am not going to be allowed them to throw me under the bus. You can take your property back, and I'm going to put you directly in contact with the resident, and you guys can figure it out, because we are not going to do that. And we will let them know, hey, look, we're stepping aside because we were told we were not allowed to fix whatever needed to be fixed. And we're not okay with that. So I also want you to think in terms of getting started, not only having that alignment with the core values, but deliver a massive amount of value to them, and do it over and over and over repeatedly, and recognize all of those things that are important to them. Recognize that their attitudes that are important to them, their lifestyles that are important to them, their interests, their aspirations, their goals. Remember Aaliyah. That's the psychology, right? That's the psychographics that we talked about under the 3 C's of business vision. When you're creating trust, I want you to know that there's different ways that you can trigger trust. And these are just ways to like, oh, this might be someone. So it's not necessarily development into trust, but this is what can trigger trust. Things like authority. Authority are things like credentials, having a title, having a position, right? Even having like a YouTube channel or having a book that you publish, right? That could be how you demonstrate authority. That's how I demonstrate authority. You can do the same thing. How about affinity? Affinity is like correlation, right? So you might develop an affinity for folks when you have a familiarity with them based on just because you see them over and over, right? Maybe you see the same guy who shows up on Instagram every single day with a new way to fix something, right? Or a new tax tip or something like that. That's affinity, right? Affiliation is when so if where that affinity might be more like a shared geography, affiliation is more like being associated or connected to a trustworthy source. So they're affiliating with you like with, oh, you're a member of the Chamber of Commerce, so am I, right? Oh, you're a member of the Better Business Bureau, so am I, right? Or you're a member of the International Red Cross, so am I, right? That's how affiliation, and that's how that you get that transference of trust from affiliation. You get endorsement. That's pretty straightforward. Someone from a trustworthy source endorses you. And I did that with my book, The Time Wealthy Advantage. And I did it in a unique way by getting my previous clients and some of my current clients to provide a testimonial inside the covers of the book. So in the first couple of pages, the first thing they gave me is endorsements. It's several pages of endorsements. On the back, it's 4 endorsements right on the back page. Or on the back cover. So I'm just saying endorsements are a really powerful way to trigger trust. Demonstration, this is where you can show your competence, right? And finally, extending vulnerability, like letting people know like, hey man, I didn't always get it right. I messed up a little bit, okay? And that's really important. We talked about the trust in terms of competence, character, caring, confidence, commitment, communication, and consistency. I talked about those in the beginning, but I want you to think about this. If you've got some of these that you're doing at a really high level, you're like, nope, my character is good, my competence is good. maybe my communication needs to be a little bit better. Maybe I'm not as polished as I could be. Maybe I'm not demonstrating as much commitment, right? Maybe I'm not necessarily effective in my communication because I'm not consistent in my communication. I only show up once in a while. I don't do it consistently enough, right? So that's all around that different areas of trust. So the last little piece here, I just want to again go through this: the lead generation, the sales, the operations, and the accounting. These are really important that many people will think of them as kind of like first this, then this, then this, then this, right? First lead gen, then sales, then operations and accounting. I want you to think of it more like this, where that line never stops. And if you look at the very bottom of the screen, I'm going to put myself down at the bottom so you can see it. But do you see down there, there's like a little infinity symbol? That's the way I want you to think about marketing. That it never, 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 never ends. You keep marketing to them and you keep reaching out to them all the way through, even after they have been a customer. Why? You're like, well, I do mortgages for people, and once they get a mortgage, they don't need me again. Really? They don't have friends? They don't have family? They don't have children? They don't have neighbors? Don't think myopically. Think and make sure that you stay in front of them, right? When do you stop marketing to them? When they have demonstrated to you that they are not your avatar, or they demonstrate that they have not aligned with your core values, or they have died. Okay? And assuming you don't like to work for dead people, generally the first number 1 and 2 are pretty straightforward. Okay? This is when you stop marketing to them. Otherwise, you keep on going and you keep marketing to them forever. I will say this, that people tend to try to go to automations too soon, or they reject automation altogether. I think you can have a good relationship with automation, and automation is important. Like right now, we have an automation software which will allow restaurants to connect on Meta and be able to take and from full order straight off the menu and collect payment automatically, right? So that's a pretty cool piece of software, and we bring that as a add-in to what it is that we do. And people like that. Many restaurants like that. Many other types of companies like that. You know, just different online companies. But my point is that if they either go all automation or they go no automation, and I want to make sure, like, if you are going to go automation, just don't put them into a list too soon. Build them up and reach outside of the automation software once in a while so people know. Everyone on this call is going to hear from me, right? Everyone on this call is going to get, I mean, if you came in through Eventbrite and I've got your email address, I'm going to email you because it's important for me to maintain that relationship. I want you to think in terms of infrastructure from software and websites. You know, think about the automations and the integrations that we talked about. We talked about MailChimp, Constant Contact, Zapier, Odoo, right? Once you know their problems, you can deliver value to help solve those problems. And you're going to be delivering your value on through these software platforms, right? You're going to be delivering lots of value to them. And you're going to be saying, hey, I know that you mentioned that you really liked, you know, I don't know if you're a World Cup fan, but man, what a game, right? That was a really cool game. What a really neat thing that we saw. Or, hey, you know, did you see that finish, you know, that NASCAR race? I don't know if that was your thing, but whatever. Like, this is a way that you can do that and use automations and integrations to keep in contact with them, especially with things that may be important to them. And even if it has nothing to do with your product or service. Okay. Once you know their problems, you can deliver value to solve those problems and give away tons of value. Make sure you're staying relevant to them. And again, think about that. How can you demonstrate competence to your avatar? Listen, at the very beginning of this, we're going to put the fries in the bag here, but this is where you're starting to seek knowledge to understand versus seeking knowledge to take action. I want you to think about what you're going to specifically take action on. We did a little bit of a review there at the end, but I just want you to think about what it is that you're going to what action you're going to take. Let me go ahead and drop off to take myself out of the photo here for just a second, because I want to show you this next slide. What you're going to see here is a guy holding a pistol on a bank teller. And he's a bank robber, unfortunately. He thought it was a really good idea for him and his accomplice to rob 2 banks in Pittsburgh back in the mid-90s. And he was doing that without any attempt at all to disguise his face. Instead, what he had done was he covered his face in lemon juice. And he was sure that it was going to make them invisible to security cameras. Now, for those of you who may know, you know, like that invisible ink trick, you know, where you can take and put, you know, you write with lemon juice, and then you hold it up to a heat source, and it right, it's invisible ink. Well, he thought for sure that if he did that he would be invisible to the cameras. So obviously they got caught. And the interesting thing about this is that these two researchers by the name of Dunning and Kruger, they had to research this. They were like, this is crazy. And what they did was they recognized how false confidence plays a role. And it plays a role for not just, you know, bank robbers, but it plays a role for many people, especially business owners. So how this generally works is you see the competence, right? What you know on the bottom axis, and the confidence on the y-axis, on the vertical axis. And this is basically competence and confidence over time. So as you start out at the very bottom, you start out with very low competence and very low confidence. But as you start out right away, you're like, oh my gosh, how hard could this be? So your confidence spikes up really, really quick until you get to the peak of what's called Mount Stupid. And Mount Stupid is where you start to realize all the things that you don't know. When you start out, you're like, you don't know what you don't know. And when you start realizing, oh my gosh, there's a lot of things I actually don't know, this is where you start to peak. And you peak at the peak of Mount Stupid. And that's when it comes crashing down pretty quickly to the Valley of Despair. So here you are, you're in the Valley of Despair. You're like, oh my gosh, you've learned a little bit, not a lot. You've gained some competence. And this is where you start thinking and looking around. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. Man, what am I going to do? I'm kind of lost. And this is when a lot of business owners drop out. This is when a lot of business owners, they start with that shiny object syndrome and they start wandering. This is where commitment really, really matters. But if you stay with it and you work on your competence, you work on your knowledge, you start up that slope of enlightenment, and you get eventually to that plateau of sustainability. You build your confidence back as you build your competence. So this is what I want you to think about for you guys, and think about how you can be in a tribe and people and around people where you can ask questions, and you can be in a community with me. It does not cost anything right now. It is called school/strategic boardroom. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the comments section if you guys are interested. Right now, there is no cost to join, but it will not stay that way. And that is the absolute truth. And the reason for that is because I want to make sure that we are getting people in there that really are who we're looking for. So you can go ahead and go to that link right there and join us there in the school classroom. We do have a question. Let me see here, Robin. Robin says, oh, okay, so we are going to define our client avatar. Excellent. Yeah, and I think you getting dialed in, Robin, in terms of what your client avatar really is, I think is really going to help you get much more clear in your marketing. And a lot of times when people are not clear, especially in any of those 3 C's of business vision, I'm telling you, marketing gets a lot more difficult, especially if you start recognizing that you're attracting the people that you don't want to be working with. So that sounds to me like that's where that disconnect would start. And then make sure that the messaging that you're putting out there is matching the client avatar. It's matching the target market, matching that individual audience. So that is all I have, everybody. Thank you so very much for sticking around. Go ahead and click on that link, and I will see you guys in the boardroom. Thanks so much.